Welcome to the Impactful Engineer Project. I'm Steve Maxey, and with my co-host and brother Jake, we are here to bring you guidance, fresh ideas, and the tools to help you become an impactful engineer.
Welcome to the Impactful Engineer. Our mission is to help you grow your engineering career and inspire you to pursue your full potential, not only as an engineering professional, but as a member of your greater community. I'm Jake Maxey, and I'm a professional electrical engineer for an engineering consulting firm called Hallam ICS. I'm here with my brother Steve. He is a mechanical engineering manager in new product development for Klein Tools. So let's get some housekeeping stuff out of the way, and then we'll dive right into the episode. Within this podcast, we have a few episode types. The first and main one has Steve and I jumping on here, giving you, presenting a topic where we introduce the why and the how around that topic and give some tips to inspire some action. 2, occasionally we have quick solo episodes where either one of us get on, immediately get down to the point, we share an idea with you that we think is critical to you growing your career. These can be high-level concepts that change your thinking and mindset, all the way to more detailed topics to inspire specific actions. 3, about once a month or so, or whenever we feel like it, we have a guest come on. They will have a certain expertise that we think is going to be valuable for you. So we'd like to have them come on, have a conversation with us, try to pull all the golden nuggets out of that conversation to help you all. If you like that, that's what we do. And give us a follow on LinkedIn. You can find Steve and I on there just by searching our names. Interact with us, send us DMs. We're always available to chat. Also, if you have any specific questions that you're just dying to ask and perhaps engage with on the show, we have an email. questions@impactfulengineer.com. That's where you can reach us. Whew. All right, lots of stuff. Let's dive into the main episode. We have a guest on today. Monte Pedersen is with CDA Group. I'll allow him to fill you in on who he is and what he does, but I'll tell you that he has a way with strategic execution and leadership that will help any aspiring engineer become the best versions of themselves. So, Monte, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be here and have enjoyed your show. But more importantly, I think what I really admire is the impact that you're having on people. That you're willing to put yourselves out there and provide content, and not just I'm sure it goes beyond content, the mentorship, the coaching, the life hacks. I mean, those are things that I would have, as a young professional, really benefited from. But unfortunately, because of the time and circumstances, couldn't. So if you're an engineer out there and you're not taking advantage of these boys, you're missing out. So I highly recommend the program and connecting with these two in whatever way possible. So anyway,
Really appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I'm just pretty passionate about leadership, and when I see people who step up and get out of their comfort zone and do something extraordinary, I just like to call it out. But yeah, so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, why not? Because we were talking about before the show, it's like we can be a part of helping people shortcut a lot of intentional effort, financial strain by bringing all of this information and knowledge right to this free platform. You know what I mean? So it's just awesome to be able to do that. And I see it as just why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we do it? So
yeah, when you think about it, it's the definition of wisdom, right? Because you're giving somebody a shortcut. You're basically taking them aside, slapping them across the face, telling them to wake up and saying, listen to this, and you'll be better for it. And so that can save people a lot of years of frustration. I mean, you could really change somebody's life by doing that, their whole life trajectory. So anyway, kudos to you both. So,
and
yeah.
So me,
yeah. Let's get to you.
So me, I work in the field of strategy execution, and I kind of came into it kind of in a funny way. I had a 3-decade-long career, very successful career in service management. Worked for 2 global, contract management service providers, and it was really a good career, except, towards the end, the business became highly commoditized, and it really wasn't a great place to work anymore, or a great business. The three major companies had taken all the margins out of the business, and it just became kind of cutthroat. So when that career ended for me in 2016, I thought about what is it that I could do that could make a difference, and people wouldn't be feeling at the end of their careers like I am right now. And I met an individual who had built a model for strategy execution back in the late 1990s, and basically he and his wife, who was an organizational psychologist, built a program to help leaders tell their people what it was they were trying to do and get them aligned with it. In fact, he was this individual, Wayne Nelson is his name, but he was a consultant in the aeronautics field in Southern California. And this client came to him and said, "My people don't understand what I'm talking about. They don't know where I'm going and what I need them to do." And so, Wayne went home. That was like a Thursday. He went home over the weekend and said, "We need to find a way to help him connect with his people and get them aligned so he can execute on what he wants to do." So they created this paper-based version of a system that allowed them to have conversations with their people and to connect, again, Jake, to your earlier point, at every level of the organization and get everybody contributing. And it worked out so well that Wayne changed his whole consulting business to just focus on that. And so it was a paper-based model until about 2004, and then he digitized it and supported it with a software program, a software application. But, I don't really like talking about the software application because people think then you're selling them software, and it's really not. You're teaching them the principles of strategy, execution, and leadership, and you're getting them to behave and function in a way that is advantageous to the business and beats the competition. So anyway, that's how I got involved. I met Wayne Nelson and had a few conversations with him. And, when, my first career ended, I just said, I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to focus on this area. And that's been 8 years now. And I've even taken it kind of a step further, and working with a colleague in Switzerland. One of the things that we've discovered over these 8 years about execution is that people have a hard time understanding strategy, and they have a very hard time figuring out how to execute. And they're codependent concepts, right? You need a good strategy, if you're going to be successful in business, and you need a plan for how you're going to, implement that strategy. And that's basically the execution side. Well, the analogy I like to use is, if you're standing at a canyon's edge and you're looking across and there's no bridge, on one side, consider that your strategy. On the other side are the results you're looking at, and there's no bridge. That's essentially what most organizations face in terms of strategy execution these days. They think that if they create a great plan or strategy and put it out there and communicate it well once or twice, that people, and then they go and they hire smart people, that they're just going to grab onto it, and they're going to be able to take it and translate that effectively through the organization, and everything's going to click, and their strategy is going to succeed. Well, guess what, right? Almost anywhere from 65 to 90% of all strategies fail or fall short significantly of what organizations are trying to do. So anyway, I've worked with this colleague in Switzerland, Jacob Boven. You may have come across him on LinkedIn, and we built this process called STEP, which is short for strategy to execution performance. And it's that bridge. We're basically teaching people how to take. We don't necessarily tell you. We tell you need a good strategy, but we tell you how to learn how to execute. And you don't necessarily even need a good strategy or a strategy to start. You can just start off with a few initiatives and start accomplishing those. And that in itself will teach you a lot about what it takes to build a strategy. So over time, you'll get better at strategy as a result of executing. So anyway, that's the STEP focus, but that's the long, short version of kind of how I got to where I am today. And I want to bring that all back to leadership and engineering, because obviously these are some of the same symptoms that you guys probably see in in your business. And engineers are in the middle of it, right? Smart people that want to contribute but don't necessarily know how, because there isn't a good level of organization, sort of transferring through the organization.
So much to unpack there. I see, like, I have so many questions. That was very well put. And for me, that's where my mind is. I understand that wholly and completely, but I think we might spend the rest of our time, I think, Steve, and I'll pass it on to you in just a second, but let's pick some nuggets out of there. Let's break it down. My high level, what I would like to get across, which I think will be so helpful for aspiring engineers, even like mid-level management too, is yes, we can teach someone to be great at strategy. Okay, cool. We can teach someone to be great at execution. Okay, cool. That bridge that Monte was talking about, how do we fit that in? Who does that? Who supports the bridge? Who is running across the bridge? Who is making these connections? And in my mind, it can't be one group or one person. You just can't do it all. Maybe if you were an entrepreneur and you started a solopreneurship and you were the guy, then sure. But as you grow, you got to learn how to teach others how to do those pieces and build the bridge. And then I think that's where the software comes in. Gives them a way to do it without you after you've gotten them started. And then you can keep going and going and building on that. And so that's how I see it, Steve. But what are your thoughts?
The thing that popped out is actually a little bit different, but I just wanted to tie it to distinguishing values, on a poster. And you're like, hey, we have these distinguishing values. Here they are. All right, go. And then there's no explanation of like how you can operate day to day within those values. There's, the core values. That was the word I was looking for. You're not using them to give examples throughout, the day to day. You're not living and breathing them. And so everyone who just sees them, there's like, yeah, it's just a poster on a wall. I'm not embodying those values at all. And I think that's the same kind of thing. If you have a strategy and a mission that you're trying to accomplish, but you're not, really conveying it to the team, it's just a bunch of words, and they don't understand the why behind it. They're not in alignment, and they're just not going to be able to execute to it.
But they are hungry though too, to do it. So giving them that ability to execute would be hugely beneficial in my mind, especially for the aspiring engineer.
Mm.
What you're talking about, Steve, are what I refer to as foundational elements. Their mission, vision, core values, core behaviors. And I even go so far as to include the strategic initiatives that you're trying to accomplish in that year. Those should all be fundamental to your people. Because if you're not living your values, if you're not reinforcing them through everything that you do, you're missing a huge opportunity to guide and direct and lead your people. Because when you think about it, if you do a really, really good job with those things, you're impacting culture. And probably one of the best examples of that is Southwest Airlines. And again, I know it's an overused business story, but how the hell do you ignore 47 years of continuous growth and profitability? And just they fly more passenger seat miles than any other airline in the world, and arguably they are the greatest airline ever to be built. But they have three main core values, and they've lived off these forever. And you've probably heard these in some form or fashion, but the three are low fares. So number one core value is we're going to be the low cost provider, and we're going to make it accessible to everyone, so the common man can fly, right? Because back in the in the late 60s, early 70s, when they built the airline, that wasn't the case, because flying was expensive and only enjoyed by certain people. So anyway, low fares. Second value, we believe in on-time arrivals and departures. We're gonna get you there. We're gonna give you a good price to fly, and then we're gonna get you there on time, and we're gonna get you back home, and we're gonna do it safely. And then the third value was do not tolerate anyone or anything that gets in the way of values 1 and 2. And when you think about it, it's brilliant, right? Because if you're a baggage handler, if you're a flight attendant, if you're a pilot, if you're a gate agent, you're on the job, you're working and somebody positions a question to you, or you have a decision to make on the organization's behalf, you can answer that by just going to those values. So, I mean, that's a pretty obvious example, but it brings out the importance of what those founding elements are. That they've got to be more than just words on the wall and nice public facing statements on your website, and that's what most organizations do with them, and that's a shame.
Yeah, that example really showcases they're aligning their entire mission of their company to servicing their specific customer avatar of, what does this customer want? They want to be on time and to afford to fly. And that is it. So everything revolves around servicing that customer. And you can apply that to any industry, any company or engineering firm. Is what does your customer avatar care about the most? And you can build your culture, you can build all your systems and everything around that. And that's how you can find the most success.
Yeah. And as you guys are talking, I was kind of thinking about, it sounds like Southwest Airlines did not dilute their core values, right? So like some people will have 6 to 8 to 10 and then have heavy explanations about what they are. And then most people will be confused about how to tie those back to our daily actions and behaviors within the company, especially leadership, down to, their direct reports or their peers. Like they would probably be confused if there were 6 to 8 to 10 of them. That I can remember those, and I've got a lot of information floating around in my head, but I can remember the low fares and getting them there without, incidents, right? So, and then not letting anything get in the way of that. Like that's pretty nifty in my opinion. And you could do that at any level in the organization with how you direct your behaviors too. So like think about maybe clarity and simplicity is what I take from that.
Yeah. And leaders should have an obligation to their team, to their people, to make sure that there is clarity, that mission, what we're here to do every day, right, is well known. The vision, when we look out over the horizon, whatever that time frame is, that we know where we're going. Core values obviously they're somewhat aspirational, and I'm not a huge core values guy, but done in the right way. I'm more of an advocate of core behaviors. Core behaviors come down to the person and basically say these are the things that everybody adheres to, right? These are the non-negotiables. They're the ante to play. You either do these or you're off the team, and they apply to everybody from the president all the way down to the frontline worker or security guard, whoever it is. And that's that's just really important to know that there's not a second, there's not a double standard with respect to how people are expected to behave. And then I like strategic initiatives combined with that, because at any given time your people really need to know what you're going after, and you've got to find a way. And Jake, this comes back around to the point you mentioned at the beginning of the cast. How do we effectively translate that, or how do we say that at every level of the organization so that people understand it has meaning for them? You've got to find a way to communicate those initiatives throughout the organization, effectively translate them so that people can act on them and know what they need to do, and know that what it is they do in their role contributes to them happening.
Yeah. And I'm going to zoom in real quick, like pretty far, just for a second. I do want to give a tactic that I found helpful. So I'm a senior engineer. I don't manage a bunch of people. I have one direct report. But what I've found makes it very clear and had a big impact on the team so far, like with all my peers, and I've been hearing it from, feedback and stuff, is that with my direct report, I've given ourselves a chance to frequently talk about the core initiatives of the company, and then tie it back to what the behaviors my direct report is taking that support that. And then I reinforce it weekly. So I have, there's varying degrees to this. We've dropped some weeks and added some weeks, but I have a weekly reporting document that he fills out that has a bunch of questions. How did you do this week? What estimates of hours you're going to spend on something went over? And then we say, what core value did you see from you or somebody else displayed this week? Tell me a little bit about it. What were your successes this week? Blah, 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 whatever the other questions are. And then I get a lot of insight out of that. And then I write a report at the end of the week. I call it the Maxi Minute. I just started doing that recently, but it's just a recap of the week's happenings. And I stole that from another podcaster that I listen to a lot, but I was like, hey, this works. I reinforce the core values. I tell him what I saw as a win. I give them updates on what I've been hearing from management because I'm a step closer to that than my direct report is. So I bring that information and distill it down to him. And I say, man, I've been hearing a lot of good stuff about some details and standards that we're going to be improving upon. I've heard a lot of that from you. So I just want to let you know that people are working on it and it's coming. And you're going to have a chance to weigh in on that. I've seen you do this and this, whatever it is. I just kind of one pager. But that just brings the strategic initiatives of the company closer to him and makes him feel like he's a part of it, right? Which he is, absolutely. So just one tactical way to do that. Do what works for you, but
you've just uncovered the one secret to the issue of employee engagement, right? Everybody thinks that employee engagement is such an issue. Well, once you start talking to your people and talk to them on a consistent basis and talk to them about real things, you're going to find that you're going to get people engaged. They're going to have a comfort level with what's happening. They're going to understand things better. They're probably going to work harder and be more productive. There's no negative in connecting with your people on a consistent basis and letting them know what's going on. So that's awesome, Jake. Really, really great to hear that. It's a great model for others to follow.
Yeah, I know it feels good when it happens for me. So, and I consider myself like, I don't need any of you. Like, let's go. And I still feel great about that. So it's like, there's got to be something to it. So,
well, and some people think that you mentioned you only had one direct report, right? Or some people don't have any direct reports, but the reality is you still have to lead yourself. And then the other thing that people overlook is that you have this circle of influence. You have colleagues, you have people above you. Some of you will have people below you in the organization, and you've got to be invested in all those people. And if you're not spending the time to do that, then you don't have enough time to do your job, because that's really what it is. You've got to see to the success of those people around you, and great execution just will not happen unless you have those relationships and people understand what you're all doing.
Yeah, every individual contributor can be a leader, and lead those around them, and that mentality will propagate with their peers, and they will lead back. And be more successful as a team versus just everyone kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah, the collaboration just doesn't happen. Peter Drucker's famous for saying only three things happen in organizations: chaos, dysfunction, and underperformance. Everything else takes leadership, and that's really true when you think about it. Because left to our own devices, and this is what happens with strategy, right? The leaders get this big, beautiful program built, and they all love it, and they're happy, and they put it in 100 slide decks of PowerPoint, and they printed it up, and the boards approved it, and they take it out to the people, and it makes the people all happy, and they clap, and as the people walk out of the road show or however it's presented to them, they're kind of waving, "Oh, that's great. Let me know when you get there." They don't own any of it. They don't see themselves as being a part of it. They just go back and they focus on their day to day, and they don't look at what they need to do to help move the organization in the direction that they were just kind of given. It just falls off the cliff at that point.
So since our audience is going to be primarily beginning to a few years in engineers, how can they take action themselves to gain that clarity from their own leaders and be able to distill the strategies and the missions that they're presented? And if it's a little on the confusing side, how can they distill those down to be actionable ideas?
Hey, my fellow impactful engineers, if there's one thing that you could do to help out this community, is to keep listening to the podcast, but also, if you found value in it, to share it with one person, give us a 5-star review, or even leave a text review. It'll only take a few seconds of your time. Find that person that you think could enjoy some of this or learn from it, and pass on the good word. Now back to the show.
I would give them 2 recommendations Steve. The first one would be if you're not having a regular conversation, and again, people talk to their managers, their supervisors, their boss. They talk to them a lot, but these are what I call kind of fleeting conversations, right? They're topics about what's happening, right now, and what, I need some information, what have you. And those things are going to continue to happen. But you really need to demand a sit down with your manager, probably a minimum, probably every 2 to 4 weeks. Sit down and have a sit down with them and ask them point blank, how's my performance? What can I be doing that I'm not currently doing that would help me in my role? What can I do to help you, to help the people around me? And just maybe put them on the spot, but get 45 minutes to an hour where they just focus on your development. So that's the first thing I would tell a young engineer. The second thing I would say is, as part of that conversation, have structure with them a personal development plan. Tell them your goals, tell them your aspirations, tell them what you're thinking about, and say, what can I be doing in my role, in my daily responsibilities and above and beyond to help me get to these, and work something out. And I'm not talking about, the boss telling them to read a book or go to a conference or, right? I mean, you can do that stuff, and that can be helpful, but really substantively sit down and say, what's it going to take? What moves me from this level to the next level? And, I want to be this type of engineer. So, how do I get there? And coach them, mentor them, guide them. So those two things: regular conversations and a personal development plan. If your boss doesn't want to do either one of those things, then start looking for another job, because you're totally with the wrong company, and you're working probably for an asshole.
Just to put it bluntly, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that word is taking on a sort of a new connotation in business circles, right? Because you only have to say it once, and all of a sudden, what pops in your mind is,
right.
that one jerk you worked for, right?
Yep. I saw him completely in my head just now.
Yeah.
I do want to add that. So going back to being able to lead yourself. So there's so many podcasts out there. So like, ours, I won't start naming podcasts, but there are engineering focused related soft skill and leadership podcasts out there that you can listen to. And if you just forget about what is this going to do for me and just start listening to them, you're going to start honing yourself into what you like to hear, what you think is beneficial for you. I just want people to start investigating, leading yourself, because when you ask for that one-on-one and then the feedback, if you run into somebody, they could be an asshole, but if you run into somebody that just doesn't know or get it or even understand how to reciprocate this with you, you should be armed, or I recommend that you be armed yourself, and how to teach them how to teach you. So you would be guiding them, being patient with them, and letting them know how to give you what you need, or at least be able to open the conversation so that you can work on it together. Then you're both growing. Then if they come out the other side with you 6 months to a year later, knowing how to do that process, they can bring that, your leader can bring that with them wherever they go. So you're only helping them in the organization or wherever they end up, and you've helped somebody learn something along the way anyway to make their life better, right? So arm yourself with that so that you can make that a possibility as well.
Yeah, and you're going to create such an advocate by doing that. Within that relationship,
so many benefits.
Inside the company, they're in those hallway conversations that you're not around, and they're talking to their leaders. They're going to be such an advocate about, hey, this Jake is such an up and comer. He's helped me figure out a few things, and I've helped him, and I really see him being a rising star. And you're not there, but now you've created that advocate on your behalf. And it's just going to be a win-win across the board.
It is a rare situation, though.
Yeah, and again, I didn't mean to paint the picture that if somebody doesn't talk to you, or somebody won't develop a plan with you, that they can't do that, because there are people who probably have been put in a position of leadership and they don't know how to do those things. So yeah, you can help them, and you can do it together, and it needs to be done together anyway. But yeah, you've got to have that awareness, and again, I would think this is probably something that impacts engineers, because, and again, I don't want to stereotype or go down that road of saying that all engineers are eggheads that study and very smart, and therefore they lack those, right? They lack those emotional intelligence skills. But if you are like that, right? If you're very focused on what it is you do and committed to it, and you don't necessarily see the world in the same way, you've got to get that self-awareness. You've got to understand. You've got to understand how you see the world, how you see people, and how you interpret their actions, and then you've got to understand how you impact others, how your appearance, how your how the things that you do at work, right, affect people. You've got to know how that's coming through, and so seeking that self-awareness will help you become an emotionally intelligent leader and kind of move you out of that. But it all goes back to what you said, Jake, that when you can have candid, active dialogue, I kind of call it the live ammo. When you can have those conversations with your manager, and they're open and they're honest, you can achieve a lot, and you can move the needle pretty significantly in their career as well as your own. And if you're a leader and somebody's coming to you and asking for that, I got to be like smiling ear to ear, because that's the kind of person you want working for you, right? That can step up and wants to be accountable, and wants to achieve great things. They see that it's more than just doing what I come here to do daily. It's helping the organization learn, improve, and grow, and get better. And that's a springboard for them and for you.
Yeah, as a manager, that is like the most exciting thing when someone comes in and is just already jumping into like, how can I be more impactful? How can I do all these things? And can you help me do this? And just listening. I had this happen to me recently. I'm just smiling ear to ear. I'm like, this is awesome. This is super exciting. And that you're instantly going to be able to just jump in this and figure things out a lot faster, and just make a huge difference.
Yeah. And if you're a leader, and again, going back to the strategy execution slant of the conversation here, is when you're talking to your people at every level, you're gaining access to information, right? I mean, yeah, the leaders can sit up here, and they can look down on the organization, and they can see things happening, and they can make predictions and all that. But if you're getting regular reports back from your direct reports, and they're talking to their direct reports, and they've got a feedback loop that's giving them information and insight, all of a sudden leadership has line of sight into the entire organization, and they're able to act and be more responsive and make better decisions. So so everybody throughout the layers of the organization, if you will, have a role to play. And if you're that leader and it stops at your level, then you're circumventing progress and potentially even your career. But if you're basically going to your people and saying, guys, how are we missing it here? And you have a psychologically safe environment where people aren't afraid to speak up, and they're telling you, well, we suck at it, right? And here's why.
Yeah, right.
And so,
Yep.
and leadership may not be getting that message. It may only go up one level and stop. It, might go up a couple. And in smaller organizations, right, it should be the whole team. And as a leader, if you really want to execute well, you're committed to your people, and you're committed to their success. And in strategy execution, we work with something called a performance agreement, which is basically just a collaboratively developed agreement that outlines, what are the key responsibilities of this individual, and what are the goals and tasks that they have on their plate right now. Because I'm really a heavy believer in having a culture of goal setting. But as a leader, you're invested in that team member's success. And when you sit down and you write a performance agreement with them, you're basically in it, meaning if they fail at this, then you failed, right? That's the depth that you should be taking it. That, you're committed to their success. They see it, they understand it. And then, you guys work it out together. And if you're having those regular conversations, you're modifying, you're adjusting things when something gets off track, you're getting it back on track. So there's just a lot of power in that whole concept of communicating effectively, throughout the organization and keeping people engaged and inspired to motivate themselves to do what needs to be done.
Absolutely. That's where I like to play. I'll
you
say
guys
one
are the
thing
exception, though. That's the problem. You're the exception to the rule. So
we're going to try to create some more exceptions here.
That's
just,
it.
Bear with us here. I want to say one thing about I can hear people in the back, way far in the back. They're saying, but nobody cares what I think. Jake, Monty, Steve, nobody gives a shit. Well, what I'll say to that is, wouldn't you rather have given the feedback, said the thing, given your opinion on it, and have it go and sit, and perhaps nothing happens with it, than having never said a thing and just allowed your self-fulfilling prophecy, this evidence pile that you're piling onto your career that no one will ever listen, so I'm just never going to say anything. You're just closing off an avenue for such great growth and potential for the future for yourself and the company by doing that. So I encourage you to, even if you think that no one will ever listen to what you have to say or even record it, to still voice your opinion about it in a respectful, tactful manner, delivered without any sort of, aggressiveness or creating this perception that you're just a shouter. But give it to them, lay it out, try to create that one-on-one feedback session so that you can get those things out and they can be recorded. Because I'll tell you what, like, I've had I say many things. We have a portal in my company for, hey, have you run out of people to tell and you just want us to give you your ideas? We get to put them in there. So I've had many conversations with myself in the portal, but I've actually seen years later things starting to trickle through that there's no other explanation for it other than some of my words have made it through and somebody's actually doing something about it. And there was one recent one that's for sure based on my messaging over the last 3 years. And so don't think it's falling into nothing. Put it out there. I'll leave you with that.
No, as opposed to the alternative, right? Which is, I've never used this term, but I've read it a lot. Quiet quitting. It's just, right. You're accepting the status quo. You're at that point, you're in it for a paycheck, and your productivity goes down. And I mean, just think if you have an organization with a couple hundred people like that, what's that costing you and your organization? And that's before they quit, and you have to rehire and retrain and spend even more money to get back to where you were.
Right.
We're seeing a huge shift in decentralization, and I think it goes back to your audience, the millennials and the Gen Zs, and just not being willing to accept what my generation and the generation before me, my parents' generation. We would remain committed no matter what, right? Because we were told we had to have a good job with benefits, and that was the way to succeed. And the generations that we're working with now don't quite see it that way. They want feedback in the moment. They want to know what's going on, and they want to be a part of the success. And they kind of want to know what's in it for them. And it's a good question. It really is, because employers need to they need to offer their people something to hang their hat on, something that they can commit to, and if they're gonna commit and invest that time.
And if we want to call ourselves good leaders, that's what we're going to do, right? We're not going to just hang on to the past. We're going to adapt, and we're going to do what's required now, right? So
yeah. There's a really good book written by a couple of Deloitte consultants called Detonate, and these guys talk about blowing up the old playbooks and thinking differently, and they make a lot of sense, because they have this. I'm just paraphrasing, but they call it the first rate rule of business. Is that if you're gonna achieve something great, you're gonna find yourself asking an employee to do something different than what they're doing today, right?
Yes.
It's just fundamental behavioral change, and we're just, as humans, we're just wired neurologically to get comfortable, right? To make things safe for us and just kind of stay in a pattern. And the reality is that's not good enough, because we're not moving industries in decades anymore. We're moving them literally in minutes and hours, thanks to, technology and great engineering and podcasts like this, right? So, when you think in those terms, and these kids that are digital natives that grew up with seeing the advancements and even really thinking out of the box and, in their parents' basement, creating tools that, nobody ever thought possible, right? How many people probably got in you guys' lifetime? How many you thought you'd be doing your banking online, right? I mean, there are just so many modern conveniences now that it's just rapidly moving things at such a pace that if you don't pay attention, you're going to get flattened. You're going to get run over.
Yeah, the whole world is built on convenience now. But we can take a tactical approach to that, though. We can bring that into our careers and business. And it's the way I see it is the least amount of friction there is between where we want to go and then what do we have to implement to get there. Like, that's where some great success can come from. And I've just seen in my career, I've been in it for 10, 11 years, pretty young, but the companies that take the longest to implement change get stuck. And the companies that can find a way to shortcut that or just get out of each other's way end up creating something pretty massive and pretty impactful. Of course, there are people and companies that wouldn't care to grow that fast, but I think it's a good message for the people that would listen to this podcast, which is about rapid, accelerated career growth and a purposeful and, ever increasing journey to knowledge, wisdom, excelling, moving up in the company. That's something to consider for sure in your own career. How do you remove the friction?
Yeah, and I think that friction is caused by a foggy path, right? If you have a clear path to your growth that you establish with your leadership, you're going to be excited to continue to grow with that particular company. I think that's one of the main reasons why there's a lot of overturn in younger engineers these days. Is if they don't see a clear path for growth, they will move on to another company quickly. It's not necessarily they aren't seeing, oh, I'm not getting promoted once a year. It's, I don't have a clear path to get promoted. I'm going to go look elsewhere. If they have a clear path and they're like, hey, if I do X, 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 and I launch this thing or accomplish this project or whatever, and I'm well on my way to do those things, I'm not going to look elsewhere because I am aiming to accomplish this next step in my growth.
And effectively, they become patient.
Yes.
But the underlying theme there is they have options, right? And they're not afraid to exercise them. Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of these organizations don't see is they just think that there'll be an uninterrupted source of people, and there may be that, but they may be the wrong people.
Yeah, it's going to be your bottom half of performance for sure.
Yeah, you're going to get and you're going to commoditize the business, and you're probably going to sell it or dump it, or you're just not going to be aggressive in terms of where you could potentially take your industry, especially if you're not thinking about what's next, because what's next is here.
Yeah. What's next is here right now. Dude, we could keep talking for hours. Monte, is there anything that you wanted to bring up that we haven't hit that you really are dying to share with the audience?
There's probably a long list, Jake, but I would just suffice it to say that to young engineers, to young entrepreneurs, to be successful, leadership takes courage. That you really need to stand on your convictions at times, and you need to make the hard call, and you have to have the difficult conversation. And if you can't do that, don't go into leadership. And again, that's okay. I adhere to the principle that anybody can lead from anywhere at any time. So it doesn't matter if you have any direct reports or not. You can still be a leader in many respects. But if you're going to take on the title, and if you're going to take on the responsibility for 5, 6, 8, 10 people, you just sort of tripled your workload by becoming a leader. So, I always position this as courageous leadership because it really, kind of brings it down to brass tacks that if you want to be a leader, you've got to learn to be courageous, and you've got to have a thick skin and, be able to take one for the team now and then, because they will come, many times. Is it something to fear? Not really. Most of it's survivable. But there are people who just aren't cut out to do it. And we sort of put ourselves in this position where we think that, everybody should be a leader. And again, there's some things about that I would agree with, but, for the most part, voting's the same way, having just come off our election, right? It's like they want everybody to vote, but but if you don't know any of the issues and you don't understand, what's going on and what are the implications of your vote, you probably shouldn't vote. And I'd be cast out for saying that in most public places, but because it is a fundamental right as an American. But don't become a leader if you don't think so, or wait until you want to do it and then take that jump. But yeah, be courageous, because that's what it takes.
Yeah, and start practicing now. I mean, courage doesn't have to be this huge, massive undertaking and throwing yourself out there. It's small steps along the way. I mean, even to create the weekly reporting document I was talking about and sending out my maxi minute, even I was like, this is kind of like, who's going to see this and say something about it? Or because not everybody in the company, if they knew, they'd be like, why do you send that out? That's the dumbest thing. We're here to make revenue and turn that into as much profit as possible. Why would you send this weekly newsletter? To me, sending out that weekly letter is going to be one small part in bolstering everyone around me to do exactly what you're telling me. You just don't see it the same way I do. And so when most people don't see it the same way you do and you do it anyway, that's courage, right? So practice that a little bit.
It's great counsel.
Steve? Yeah. Are you a courageous engineer?
I've had a lot of hard conversations, that's for sure.
Yeah, man. And I've been in there.
Yeah. And, when you're in that uncomfortable zone, that's when you are grown the most anyways. So, I look forward to those. Well, I don't, but I do look forward to those hard conversations.
Yeah, the outcome is always great when you get through it, and you've probably bonded with that person a little bit more if you do it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, we are coming up on our time. We do have our questions, Steve, and I believe we start with yours.
Sure, let's do it.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, so especially, I think we'll have a lot of insight here going over everything we've already talked about. But Monte, in your eyes, what does it mean to you to be an impactful engineer?
To be able to know that what you're doing has value, and that it can be measured in some way, and that it's having a positive impact on the end user, the customer, whoever. I think those elements are real critical in terms of being impactful in your profession.
Love it.
And Steve, you've got a lot of experience with that too, because you're in product development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tying your I love that. I don't know, being aware of first what the impact is that you have, but then being able to, because Steve, you talk about this a lot too. It's like you can get in the way of realizing that impact because you're so resistant to making any changes or doing the things that require you to eventually make that impact. But yeah, I love that answer. And then for me, of course, I'm Mr. Action. So if there was one thing for someone to start today, as soon as they get off, as soon as they turn off their player, what could they do to move themselves towards being a courageous leader, strategic execution, whatever you want to leave with them?
Yeah. Well, you've got to jump in with both feet and get involved. If you don't participate, you don't get to play. And so, whether it's just in your small circle of influence, or with your manager, or maybe with your direct reports, you've got to make sure that you get them involved and engaged in what's going on, and be an effective communicator. When employees are asked what's the one thing that my organization could do better, and something like 99 out of 100 times, the answer is, they can communicate more effectively. And so that just tells you that you've got to talk to your people more. And so start talking to people more, whether it's a colleague across the aisle or it's somebody above you or below you. You've got to start communicating more regularly. A lot of people refrain from it, especially in a leadership role, because they begin to feel like they're micromanaging people. And the reality is not everybody interprets information, the same way. We're all on different points of the spectrum. So some people, you can tell it to them once and they get it and it's automatic. And then there are people where they get it the second or third time, and then there are people like me, and you can ask my wife, that the fifth or sixth time they tell me it, begins to kind of penetrate my brain. and here's the thing: we don't look at it as micromanage at all. We look at it and we say, you know what? Thank you for repeating this and reiterating it, because now I get it. And just like those Southwest airline values, right? You got to make sure people understand what it is we're doing and why. And so communicate more effectively, jump in, get involved, and start doing it.
I love that. And I think if you have a hard time speaking like publicly or in meetings, etc., and you want to be a more effective communicator, you can always join something like Toastmasters or there's a lot of good books out there and like podcasts and stuff that will help you build communication skills.
Or hey, Steve, start a podcast.
Yeah, start a podcast.
Yeah. I've gotten way
make
better.
you a better speaker.
I think we'd all agree, 80% of this is just showing up. You commit to something and you take the first step and you do that 2 or 3 times. You may stumble a little, but boy, that fourth time you're doing it, and then you're on to the next thing, and it's just it snowballs. So if you think you can't do it, think again, because that's the way a lot of people. It's probably how most people do it.
Yeah, one of our favorite sayings is put in the reps.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
That's the perfect way to end it. Put in the reps.
Put in the reps.